So the gap is not small anymore. When you meet some people and see what they're able to accomplish with AI, and then you see others, the difference is not 2x or 5x, it's like 100x or 10,000x. So much so that it's almost impossible to ignore this anymore. Over 36 years ago, Steve Jobs had a remarkable thing to say about, well, not exactly this, but something related.
I remember reading an article when I was about 12 years old, I think it might have been in Scientific American, where they measured the efficiency of locomotion for all these species on planet Earth. How many kilocalories did they expend to get from point A to point B? And the condor won, came in at the top of the list, surpassed everything else, and humans came in about a third of the way down the list, which was not such a great showing for the crown of creation. But somebody there had the imagination to test the efficiency of a human riding a bicycle. Human riding a bicycle blew away the condor, all the way off the top of the list. And it made a really big impression on me that we humans are tool builders, and that we can fashion tools that amplify these inherent abilities that we have to spectacular magnitudes. And so for me, a computer has always been a bicycle of the mind.
I've heard a modern version of this quote by Naval Ravikant that says, if computers are a bicycle for the mind, then AI is a motorcycle for the mind. Except in this case, the motorcycle is improving itself. Eventually, it's going to learn how to ride on water. It's going to learn how to fly, and it's going to learn to travel through interstellar space at warp speed. We haven't really answered the main question yet, though, about the motorcycle. Like, who's the driver, man? Like, who's driving this very cool motorcycle? Well, organizations around the world are scrambling to answer this question, and this has resulted in these AI native layoffs. LinkedIn, Meta, I don't know, Oracle, you name it, Intuit, Coinbase. The estimate is like in 2026, over 100,000 people were impacted. This is no joke. And Zeb Evans, who's the CEO of this tool called as ClickUp, he said we need to shift towards becoming like a 100x organization. And he said that the best engineers are wildly more productive with AI, like just with AI, with nobody else. So if you put them with like average engineers and other people who are using AI, it's just slowing the best engineers down. So if not burdened with these other people and collaboration, perhaps his 10x engineers can become 100x engineers. Now, this is an absolutely brutal take. And you can disagree with him. I do too on many counts, but I don't think you can completely dismiss what he's talking about if you've seen and experienced the power of what these things can do. I call this whole structural, deliberate, ground-up reform in an organization as intent scaling. Why intent scaling? Because agents within a shared context can parallelize. But the management of these AI agents is not trivial, right? It cannot be parallelized easily. Simon Last, who's a co-founder of Notion, has an interesting analogy. He says he compares the process of keeping these agents busy to shoveling coal within a steam engine. Are we in the steam engine as far as the AI, future AI civilization is concerned? I'll leave that one with you to think about. The second reason for intent scaling is actually not what you might think. So Caleb Gross is a security researcher. He used to work with the US Air Force, and he worked with NSA conducting cybersecurity operations against adversaries, right? So he's the best that you can get. And what he says is that what happens is that you now have this technology that can produce substantial form, but with minimal intent. Focusing on intent scaling, therefore, seems to be our ace move, right? It's not only going to help us bridge the gap between where we are and what some of these 100x, 10,000x people are doing, but also it is like a consolidated like defense against sloppification of your organization. How do we do it though? And how do we massively enable people systematically, structurally, so that they can create high quality and high velocity intent? Well, we will use a noted trick in consulting and We will sort of break it down in 3 actionable parts. Let's go. Premise number 1 is solving for lone geniuses. Hear me out. So Bob McGrew is a chief research officer at OpenAI, and over a year ago, McGrew said, as AI automates routine tasks, human work will polarize into 2 highly creative and rewarding archetypes. So he said there are 2 of them. So one is like the lone genius. So individuals basically leveraging this immensely powerful AI tools to execute massive 0 to 1. So imagine like billion-dollar companies that are run by a single person. And then there are the manager, which is basically individuals acting as a CEO and managing a workforce primarily comprised of agents, and then alongside maybe some other humans as well. It seems like an extreme prediction, because what he seems to suggest is that all the rest of it, all the coordinators and managers might just go away. So McKinsey, speaking of consultants, had a much more corporate friendly version to share with us. They talk about like 3 archetypes. So they talk about an M-shaped general manager, they talk about a T-shaped deep specialist, and an AI-powered frontier worker. What's an M-shaped general manager? Well, he or she has like expertise across like multiple domains, as you can see in the diagram. If you're working in AI, you have figured this out. So working under the span of the M-shaped manager are more like maybe T-shaped deep specialists. So these are people who are really deep in their specified domain, but they can also do really good things with AI. The premise 1 is not only about solving for lone geniuses, it's about getting like a team construct together that brings together the right kind of managers, the right kind of deep specialists, and then sometimes maybe lone geniuses as well, and the AI powered frontline workers. I really like this framing as well. Premise 2. The premise 2 is solving for wicked domains. Over here, I'm going to talk about David Epstein, one of my favorite authors. And in 2019, he came up with this book called as Range. And in Range, David Epstein cites the work of psychologist Robin Hogarth and offers a very effective mental model to think about all this. He talks about 2 kinds of learning environments. Number 1 is a kind learning environment, and the other one is a wicked learning environment. A kind learning environment, the rules are rigid and the feedback is absolute. So think coding. When you're teaching coding to somebody, output is 100% verifiable. In a wicked domain, this changes, right? So the machine hasn't quite figured it out yet, because these are like think product design or creative writing, and these are like messy human arenas where Epstein warns that the rules of the game are often unclear. Dylan Field is one of the co-founders of Figma, and at a talk in Y Combinator in 2025, he spoke about one such wicked domain, which is my favorite domain, and it's design. He said, there is something about AI that empowers the generalist behavior. In the age of AI, then what's your differentiator? And according to Dylan, it is design, it's craft, it's attention to detail. And I could not agree with him more. And as Caleb Gross would put it, there is a lot of form, but there is very little intent. And this is where you have slop, and this is where you need a human. In wicked domains, you need humans. This is the second premise, is to make sure that we solve for the wicked domains in our deliberate effort to scale intent across the organization. Final premise, which is premise 3, is solving for the right culture. And have a look at this quadrant that you can see on the screen. So you have trust, and then you have fear. And what do you think happens to creativity in a low trust and high fear environment? Well, the creativity goes there to die. And where do you think the creativity thrives? I think your instinct is right. In a high trust, low fear environment, people are more keen to experiment and express their creativity. Well, that brings us back onto the anchor question. Who is the driver? I think it's a good question. And if AI is the motorcycle for the mind, and a phenomenal one at that, I think let's just say that so long as we are mastering the intent scaling part, I don't think we need to answer that question.